All right. Welcome, everybody. Today is August 18th, 2022, and we are here to talk about our updated product roadmap at Chia. We're going to start with a quick round of introductions. I'll give a summary, and then we're going to spend about 30 minutes walking through our updated roadmap, and we'll close the last 20 minutes of the hour with a Q&A. So we'll be answering the questions that you have. Please put the questions into the Q&A box, and we will do our best to tackle them. Let's start off. I'm Paul Hainsworth. I'm our head of product management here at Chia, and I'm based in California. Pass it on to Cameron.
Hey, Cameron Cooper. I'm also on the product team, focused on developer tools.
Evening.
Hello, my name is Yiming Song, based in Texas, also on the product team, and I'm focused on the consumer experience and the farming experience.
Hi guys, I'm Will Riches. I'm on the developer relations team. We are the guys you need to go to if you're building something. To get any assistance or guidance, then come to us.
I'm Gene. Everybody knows who I am. I'm the Chief Market Officer and the brand whisperer. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Gene. Okay, so I'm gonna just start with a little bit of housekeeping, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about some themes around our roadmap. But first, the housekeeping business, we're moving to update our roadmap quarterly. We've listened to feedback from the community. I know a lot of folks have been hungry to hear about what we're working on. And so we are moving to a quarterly update. This, as our first update, is a little bit out of band. Our goal is to update toward the end or the beginning of each quarter. So expect to see another update from us in about 6 weeks. It won't be earth-shattering. Each quarterly update should be relatively iterative in nature, and you're going to start to see additional quarters added on to the tail end of our roadmap with each update. So stay tuned for that. We also will be taking community inputs for the roadmap via a tool we're going to share. We're moving our roadmap to a tool called Product Board. Yiming is going to take you through a spin of that. So there is a path for providing inputs directly to our roadmap. And finally, housekeeping, we will have a link to the roadmap initially in public Keybase channels with a permanent link to our roadmap coming soon. We're doing some pretty significant changes to our website, and once that lands, we'll have a place for the roadmap on our website. Let's jump into some key themes in the roadmap. First, I kind of want to share the mental model that we're using around our release planning and road mapping. The mental model relates to 3 different constituents that we build for. The first that we build for is our developer community, for you guys. We want to build and ship tools and capabilities that we call primitives as quickly and as early as possible, so that you can build things on top, so that you can use them for your business, and enable us to get feedback and iterate on the things that we build past that. Those things that we build are also usable by what we call lighthouse partners. A really great example of a lighthouse partner is the World Bank Climate Warehouse. We have built a whole bunch of stuff to support setting a direction in the carbon credit space. Another great lighthouse partner example is IFC, which we just announced yesterday with the Carbon Opportunities Fund. Those lighthouse partners will help us blaze a trail or shine a light on opportunities that our third constituent will be using, which is enterprise adoption. So everything we build is thinking about that mental model: build for developers first, lighthouse partners, and enterprise adoption as a really core area where we're going to see growth in Chia blockchain. So with that mental model in mind, we have a few themes for our roadmap that you're going to see as Yiming walks you through it. The first is around a concept called a market instrument, which enables us to move into different segments or verticals with a set of core capabilities. There are 3 of them in mind. One is around minting, for minting cats. So this is around like tokenizing any kind of asset. In the IFC example, it's tokenizing carbon credits. So you'll see a primitive on our roadmap related to that, and then a nice shiny application or an applet that will come out later next year. The other part of the market instrument is around custody. We have a custody capability for our pre-farm that we'll be talking about, but we're going to be releasing that as a core primitive and then enabling enterprise customers to have the same types of custody and control capabilities that our pre-farm has. And then the third really important capability is around permissioning. If you're an enterprise player, you're interested in managing the private keys for those minting tools and for your custody beyond just a single private key or a simple multi-sig. And the ability to rotate in and out employees as they come and go in the company, for example, to rekey, these are really important capabilities in permissioning that we're going to be rolling out later this year. So that's a really important theme on our roadmap. The second is around developer tools. We've got a really significant investment in making it easier to build on Chia, easier to write Chia Lisp, and easier to run wallet and nodes. So Cameron will be talking a lot about those developer tools. And then the third important theme is around scaling, and scaling across multiple dimensions. One is scaling for higher transactions, and that relates to layer 2. And you'll see stuff around ZK opcodes on our roadmap related to that scaling. Another is around scaling of multiple transactions for singletons, called singleton spend aggregation, which is a really critical thing for things like AMMs. And then the third is around node performance, enabling us to move up to what we see as our real capability around 40 TPS. So we put a lot of work into improving node performance to get us to that point. So those are the three big themes. We're going to jump in now to product board, and Yiming's going to walk us through the roadmap.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Everybody, you can see product board, right?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. So the view that I'm showing here is going to be a view that everybody in the community will be able to see. And we will share this link out after the broadcast today. So there's a couple things with product board that you'll see here. One is you'll have the ability to submit ideas. So I think, in talking with some of the Twitter spaces, we heard sort of, GitHub is not necessarily the most user-friendly way of submitting new ideas. And so this is going to help create a way for you to, give us some feedback around things that you might be looking for. And when this is submitted, we'll be working on a weekly basis to look at all the inbound requests. And when they become, when we decide to add it to the roadmap, you'll probably see it eventually show up here on the product portal here, where we have all the committed items on the roadmap listed on a quarterly level. And we also have a under consideration. So this is, again, a way for us to get feedback with any of these cards that you see here. You have the ability to vote up or down. You can comment on these things. We will be able to see them, so that gives us a way to interact with you all in the community around sort of our thinking around these things, and helping us kind of further develop and validate what we're building here. And so that's sort of the general structure here. Like I said, we have these 4 tabs at the top that are outlining what we're planning for at a quarterly level. And so with that, we'll actually start to jump into the specific requirements or the specific capabilities that we'll be adding on a quarterly level. So we'll start with Q3. And with that, maybe Cameron, I'll hand it over to you to kind of lead off the charge on some of the developer related items that will be coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let's get started with the first one here, which is secure the bag. Hopefully some of you are already familiar with this. We actually already did release it. This was something that was came out of sort of it was a Bitcoin idea that we were again first to implement. One of the great things about Chia. The thing about secure the bag is it makes it very easy to distribute a lot of coins. And so for doing things like airdrops, you can put that sort of secure the bag on chain and then unwind it and distribute all those coins. We added that capability into our cat admin tool to make it so that you can easily distribute a bunch of cat tokens. And we did this especially as a part of the cat 2 migration. So secure the bag is already out. Hopefully everybody's familiar with that. Really exciting technology. We're going to use it in more places, but that was the first application that we used for it. The next is the NFT bulk minting tool, or which probably refer to it as the minting tool. We have RPCs already in the wallet to make it so that you can mint a single NFT, but for many projects, they want to produce thousands, sometimes as many as 10,000 NFTs, and we need a specialized tool to do that. We have a tool that we've been building. We actually used it for the Chia Friends release, but it wasn't ready for release. There were some features that we needed to put in there that weren't complete yet, and so we're finishing that up. Now we're still sort of nearing the end of development, and then we'll go through testing and we'll release it to you guys as quickly as possible. Now, one of the cool things about this feature is that this tool is that in addition to making all the NFTs, it will also make offer files if you ask it to. And so this can actually help for distribution. So if you're minting a bunch of NFTs and you also want to sell them, then you can use this tool to make 10,000 offer files for those new NFTs. So we'll be releasing this in its own sort of release cycle. It does rely on some RPCs from the wallet, but once those RPCs are merged into main, we'll be able to release the tool and you'll be able to use it from there. Move on to the Chia Lisp language servers. So there's a whole suite of tools that we're looking at and we're starting to build, which will help developers who want to write Chia Lisp. There's a lot of tools that we're missing. And the first one is just great editor and IDE support. And for those of you that are familiar with this, there's a thing called the language server protocol, which allows an IDE to get intelligence about source code from another service. And so by building a Chia Lisp language server, we would be able to provide things like syntax highlighting, diagnostics, auto completion, jump to definition, all kinds of things that you're used to having sort of in an advanced editor and IDE. We'll be able to do with Chia Lisp as well. So we're building this out. It's actually will be included in our CLVM tools, and we'll do an initial release of it with a VS Code extension, but this will be compatible for anybody that wants to write extensions for other editors and IDEs. We expect to see it working with Vim, Emacs, Sublime Text. It should be able to be working with all of those that already have language server support. So that's the language server. And then last on the list that I'll talk about here is the simulator. We actually do have sort of the core of a simulator in place that we use for some of our automated tests in development, but there's some work that we wanted to do to really productize this and make it so that it was easily consumable and can be used by the rest of the community. And so this simulator will be available this quarter, and it'll have a number of things. It'll help you get going. One of the great things about it is that it actually runs the full sort of mempool and consensus layer. And so you are able to actually simulate things that happen in the mempool, but you can also march it along and farm blocks at your own rate, as opposed to having a bunch of farmers sort of automatically farming. So this will help, increase sort of development speed, but it'll also help for things like automated tests where you want to have a suite that you run against, whether it's wallet code or Chia Lisp code, and make sure that it continues to run correctly. So really excited about the simulator. Yeah, that's that. I'll hand it off to Will to talk about data layer.
So I think data layer, a lot of you on the call are probably familiar with, but essentially enables you to store larger amounts of data off chain and reference that data on chain, and enables people to then subscribe to your node to receive that data. I think out of all the kind of primitives that we have worked on and we are working on, I think it's one that the community is probably the most excited about. Been a lot of ideas we've seen that have been really kind of exciting for what people would like to incorporate with data layer. We've obviously been kind of laser focused on helping the World Bank with their implementation for the climate warehouse, solving problems specifically around that. We're going to set up a developer group for specifically for developers who want to build things on data layer to look into more detail and into what it is you want to build and what potential sort of hurdles that could be there for us to help you with, and build some tools around that. So essentially, we want to build a lot of documentation, which is going to make this stuff clearer. I think one of the differences with this primitive as well is that conceptually it's a lot different. There isn't really anything like this on other chains. So we're going to have a lot of documentation in place to make the conceptual stuff a lot clearer of what data layer is and what it actually is able to do. And then build a lot of tooling around there as well to enable developers to be able to actually deploy these primitives. And in some cases, this could be sort of tooling that makes data layer accessible in a way more similarly to traditional databases. In other examples, it could just be kind of demo code and things like that to give examples of things that you could build. Yeah, so keep an eye out on Keybase if you're interested in data layer, because we'll be announcing that group pretty shortly, and hosting some public developer calls where we can dive into more detail.
Thanks, Will. So I'll take the next view. Also, what we have planned for Q3 is wallet performance. And I saw there's a question that came up in the Q&A. This is really meant to address both speed and accuracy of getting and keeping your wallet up to sync or synced up. And so it's meant to also help address issues, in the field today around wallets that have been dusted. So there's been lots of improvements, performance improvements that have been made to ensure that, you can, one, accurately get your wallet synced, and then two, in a timely manner. So just, hang tight, but those changes are coming and will be available this quarter. The next one is NFT for cat offers. So when we launched the NFTs, we initially focused on XCH for NFT in terms of the offer trades that you can make. We also supported NFT for cat offers through the RPC. And so this update is actually providing the ability to create these NFT for cat offers or cat for NFT offers inside the GUI as well. And so, just making it a little bit more user-friendly and, further sort of enabling, all the goodness that we see in the community around NFTs today. The next item is around NFT spam, and there's going to be a few different things that we'll plan out over the next quarters, but the initial one is around just allowing people to show and hide their NFTs in their gallery. The intention here is that if you do get some spam that's sent to you, that you'll have the ability to hide it so that you're not having to see it every time it's there. And so again, just giving some more flexibility in terms of how users can manage the NFTs that they have in their gallery. And then the last one is node performance. So as you heard Paul speak about sort of one of the themes about scalability. So we've been working on a lot of under the hood optimizations to help increase the speed for full node syncs. And then as well as reducing the amount of system resources needed to perform that sync. And so a lot of goodness that's going to come from those updates once that's released. So we'll move to Q4. And why don't I kick this back over to you, Cameron, to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, one of the big things, and we've been working towards this for a while, is what we're calling the wallet SDK. And so for people that are building solutions that leverage the Chia blockchain, there are a number of issues that they have to solve. And today that they're mostly doing this using the RPCs provided by our consumer wallet, but a better approach is to actually build your own wallet and track and spend your coins directly. And so there are a lot of things that have to be done to do that. It's all the things that our wallet is already doing. We are building an SDK to actually make that much easier for developers to do. And so handling everything from key management to signatures, communicating with full node network, and then also sort of building, running, compiling sort of coin spends, everything that a wallet has to do. And so packaging that up as an SDK so that you can, from there, build your application, whether it's a DApp that you're building and you need to track coin states, or maybe you're building an AMM, or some other kind of marketplace. or even a Coin Explorer or a desktop wallet. The list is sort of is endless. And so we're building that SDK. This is going to be a long project for us. This will be the very first iteration of it. And we'll have to sort of do this in increments. The very first iteration will handle that very sort of core lower level functionality, like I mentioned, with key management and signature management, talking to the full node. And then from there, we'll add on more layers of complexity, dealing with different kind of coin types and constructing different spends, and then ultimately ending up dealing with things like offer files. And so that's the wallet SDK. We'll start. This is the first release that we'll see of it, and then we'll have iterations on it every quarter coming out. Next, we'll talk about the VS Code extension. So the very first thing that you'll see would actually be what we're going to release for the Chia Lisp language server. Well, actually, there will be a VS Code extension there, but we'll actually increment on that and add more functionality that's not directly the language server, but things for like building and running and debugging, tools that you really want to have in your IDE. Those are the things we're going to be building there. And then going on to the ZK opcodes. And so zero knowledge proofs is something that's really exciting. Hopefully some of you all are familiar with that. We want to enable zero knowledge proofs with the Chia blockchain, but in order to do that, we're actually missing some opcodes that we need. Those opcodes are all related to BLS operations that you need to be able to perform in your Chia Lisp code. And so we're going to start the process out by producing a chip to add those enhancements to the CLVM. And that's what you'll be seeing coming in Q4. Following up, then we'll talk about the release schedule for that a little bit later. Then I guess, yeah, I head back to you, Yiming, for internal custody.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. So I'll talk about the next three primitives. Again, as Paul mentioned earlier, as one of the themes is, building towards sort of supporting the enterprise use cases. And with the custody solution that we are actually going to be using for our pre-farm, we want to make that, as we've built it, available for the developer community to be able to leverage and learn from in terms of the capabilities that we have. So the custody solution provides a multi-sig capability. It provides clawback capabilities. So if you want to pull back your funds, it also provides handling different rekeying scenarios so that, if you have any sort of malicious or adversarial conditions, you can still maintain control over the assets in the custody solution. And so those are all, as it's built, something that we want to package up, make it available for developers, provide the documentation to help understand more how that custody solution works. And then the second one that is a follow-on is we want to take the clawback capability from that custody solution and build it as its own standalone primitive. This is one where we feel it is a uniquely and differentiating capability that we can provide at the wallet level. And so really want to showcase sort of this specifically as something that we enable through the developer ecosystem, but something that we also intend to plan to support in our wallet, as well as sort of, want to make sure that other wallets within our ecosystem can support. And giving users the ability to have a little bit more control over the assets in their wallet, and giving them some more sort of security controls in case, something, they lose the keys are sniffed or stolen and someone tries to steal their assets. And so we definitely do feel like this is a differentiating capability that Chia can provide, and want to make sure that this is something we can offer out for the community to leverage.
Hey, Yiming, I wanted to give Gene an opportunity to maybe talk about why we feel custody is so important and differentiated at Chia.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about it is that right now, both Bitcoin and Ethereum, for different technical reasons, can't kind of do the things we can do in custody on the Chia blockchain. Obviously, if Bitcoin were to adopt Chia Lisp, they'd have the same sorts of capabilities. But there's a whole set of very creative ways that you can set up custody and control such that you may never, ever know your secret keys mnemonics again. You can get it to be much like Gmail, where, a phone and a hardware device are the two things that get you access to your private keys and your online vault. And what's really neat about this stuff is it's the chain that actually enforces all of this. So, with time delays and other things, you've got real control and can recover from being hacked, for example. One of the things we really want to get everybody to is, when you kind of look at, for example, the NFT world, there are a specific set of social engineering attacks that work great against Ethereum. Quite a few of them already don't work in Chia. And when we add some additional custody and control elements to holding your NFTs, it's going to be very, very hard to have that social engineering attack work even there, because, for example, you might be able to claw your NFT back for 2 hours after you accidentally sent it to someone you didn't mean to. It's those kinds of tools and the ability to really be very creative with them that we think is going to be so powerful. And like in our case, it's kind of a weird thing to say, hey, we don't want to be able to move a wallet for 90 days. But, that is the kind of thing that, you can do with this. You can be as creative as necessary to build, whatever interesting custody and control environment you're talking about, be it, an art NFT collective or a major public company trying to figure out how to manage their entire SSO and general ledger and bank accounts and crypto spend. It's a really powerful set of tools that really the world's never seen before.
Great, thanks, Gene. Back to you, Eamon.
Thanks, Gene. The next primitive is decentralized identifiers, and we've already seen this released with the NFT to help establish provenance. The intention here again is a sort of developer standalone tool that really again fosters the creativity around other use cases that can leverage DIDs. And so again, it's just packaging this up in terms of what we've done and making sure that we get the chip finalized and we kind of set the initial standard for how you do DIDs on Chia. The next one is NFT for NFT offers. So this is effectively like the trading card concept that Fish has been talking about. This really will involve work both at the RPC and the GUI side so that we can, at the end of the day, allow, just NFT for NFT trades or, even looking at, multi-asset trades. So multiple NFT for XCH, for example. Those are all capabilities and an experience that we're going to be bringing forward in Q4. And then this last one is, we're working on BladeBit 2, and it is also sort of the first thing that's going to go through our beta program. And, we are excited to get the testing done on this to make sure that we get the right coverage and feedback around the performance improvements that we see around this. This is really sort of step one in a multi-step process around how we can overall make improvements to our plot times as well as our plot compression or plot format compression. So, this is really a step in that direction. And this is where, allowing BladeBit to work at the as an on-disk plotter as opposed to an in-memory plotter. And then, this is going to replace be the de facto standard that we have set up in our farming experience. And we will head over to Q1. And
hey, Ming, I just wanted to also mention, related to BladeBit 2 being in a beta program, this is a pattern we want to establish for many things that we're going to be shipping at Chia, that they run through a beta program. So we get feedback and additional testing from the community prior to declaring victory. So look out for more on that from us moving forward.
Yes, great call out. Thanks, Paul. Cameron, you want to kick off Q1?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll continue to see these wallet SDK sort of iteration cards. Not a lot of detail to add here other than this is going to be adding that next layer of complexity on top of that base that we build with V1. And so introducing new coin types that we can spend, custom coin types, that sort of thing. That's what we start to introduce in V2.
Thanks. And then we move into some more primitives, again, available for the developer community. As Paul mentioned earlier, permissioning access. So this is really around when you start looking at sort of enterprise org structures, you have different people that may have different roles, and those roles allow you to perform different capabilities. And so the idea here is that as you are assigned a role, you'll be assigned permissions to perform different actions. And so you can now manage control over who has the ability to perform those actions and what happen, and if they were to leave the company, you have the ability to reassign those permissions to others. So this is, again, just another building block that we're going to be putting in place and making available for the developer community to start with, and we'll be building more things on top of that as we'll get to in the rest of the roadmap update. The next item is enterprise cat minting. So we have a cat minting tool today, but when we look at it from the enterprise context, this is really a sort of a combination of the permissioning that I just spoke about with cat minting, so that you can limit sort of who will have access to be able to mint cats from an enterprise standpoint. And when we look at things like carbon credit funds, this will become important so that you have a set of users who have the ability to go in and mint cats in those use cases, so that you're not relying on one person and one key, and you also have the ability to rotate people in and out should there be changes there. And then on the primitive for gaming, Gene, is this something that you wanted to talk about?
Yes, certainly. So there's kind of two things going on here. And there's two types of gaming that are kind of floating in here. One type of gaming is actually randomness beacon items. So, the ability to have a source of randomness in CLVM that is trustable, third party, and usable. Already the chain, if you're not necessarily trying to write Chia Lisp, has excellent random numbers coming out of the proofs of time, the VDF. So it's really expanding that capability internal to what's going on, so that you can actually have kind of interesting playable games. The other piece of this is that Bram is really using the game metaphor to develop a lot of what are basically payment channel infrastructures. It's how do you have multi-party, high velocity, not necessarily directly on chain, but enforced by chain. So think more like Lightning. Now, there's some additional components that will come out of this in the primitives that will allow other game developers to kind of figure out how to use Chia Lisp to move a chessboard around, those kinds of activities. So you'll get a kind of interesting set of primitives to do other things with. But as I said, a major driving force of this is really to get those payment channels, at least in the one-to-one versions or one to a few, developed in Chia Lisp, shipped and available to the community to start understanding how both easy it is to implement things like Lightning, but also how it's able to do other types of payment channels that may have even better onboarding and privacy and other elements that will be exciting for people developing other applications on Chia.
Thanks, Gene. In the next section we have an enterprise custody applet. So when we talk about applets, we're talking about like a front end GUI interface. This is following on the primitive that we released before the quarter before, but now we're building something that is targeting more non-technical users and allowing them to interact with the custody solution. So this is something that we're planning for Q1. And again, goes in the theme of how we're going to target enterprises, and we look at the types of users within those enterprises that will be interacting with these tools. And the goal is to make sure that, again, non-technical users will be able to use and leverage all the power of these primitives that we're making available. The next one is clawback support. Again, this is following on the primitive that we will be making available. But now we want to build this in as a GUI experience. So when you launch the Chia wallet, being able to actually set up a clawback wallet, define all of the parameters around the clawback conditions or options, and again, really just giving the power of clawback into our consumer hands so that they can now actually, interact with and leverage this security capability or security feature. And then in the next category, Gene, did you want to talk about the ASIC Time Lords?
Yeah, certainly. So we have had a multi-year, multi-million-dollar project with Supernational to build an ASIC Time Lord. It has been surprisingly on schedule and is continuing to be mostly that. We did have a little bit of supply chain delay, so I'll call it in the 4 to 6 weeks range. But we still expect to get silicon into our hands in the November, December timeframe. Now, getting that silicon in and starting to run it on testnet, there are some interesting challenges, and the reason we're targeting Q1 for actually rolling it out is that we're going to have to kind of stage how it comes into the network because it's about a 3x speed up from the current fastest Time Lord out there. And with that, we're going to have to write a little bit more software to make sure that we don't 3x the network for a single day. Beyond that, also, we'll be implementing a process by which people can apply to buy. Obviously, we'll be focused on folks in the Chia ecosystem around the world, and also very interested in what geographies you're going to deploy these in so that we make sure that we get kind of, global reach to where our farmers are concentrated. So there's also some pieces of this which are adjusting Chia VDF to be able to recognize that the Time Lord ASIC is there and use it instead of software. So the other kind of interesting side note is this will bring most likely Time Lord to Windows, which has not been something that's been possible in the past.
Thanks, Gene. Cameron, you want to cover the next two?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So following our chip introduction for the ZK opcodes, this will be the release of them. We hope to get that in Q1 of next year. And so hopefully all you familiar with the process here. Introducing new opcodes is something that we have to stage out and can take some time. Requiring a soft fork in order to do that. And so producing the code is one thing, but then just managing the release process will be the other. Moving on to singleton spend aggregation, this is something we're all really excited about. Singletons provide a lot of functionality on the chain, but they have a drawback where they can only be spent once, or at least that current iteration of it can be spent once. There's a lot of applications that we would like to be seeing built using singletons, where multi-users can spend the same singleton, but if it can only be spent once per block, then that's a real limitation. And so we've come up with an approach to allow those singleton spends to be aggregated in a single block. This would allow many users to spend the same singleton within a block. And this will unlock tons of functionality that we're really excited about. And so that's something we're looking at releasing in Q1.
Thanks, Cameron.
Yep.
And then the next item is plot format 2.0. So I know there's some questions. Again, this is a continuation of, we'll have BladeBit 2 release that will help improve plotting times. We will also be looking at making improvements to the plot format to really kind of maximize the amount of space it takes up. So this is something that we're looking at, getting some more pretty sizable improvements against sort of what we do today. And this will also be in Q1.
So maybe this is a second to answer the question around no SSD. Gene, did you want to talk to some of our current thinking about that?
Yeah, certainly. So we have a couple different paths where we are pretty confident that we can, certainly get most, if not all, of no SSD's equivalent speed up. There actually turn out to be quite a few groups who've been playing around with this, and we had not put much focus on it. That said, we're very confident that we'll be able to release a updated Chia plots format that is as, or maybe even a little better than what's currently being offered in closed source and locking tool pool. It's important to give people plot portability, and that's one of the biggest things we want to make sure of is that we do this. I will say we're not in hair on fire mode because we'd like to make plot changes maybe once. It's kind of annoying to ask people to run shrinker or replot all the time. I do believe that most of the capabilities that are going to be interesting will be available as a shrink tool and not as a full replot tool. So you'll be able to let that kind of grind away at your farm and shrink those things down and then plot a few new ones to fill the empty space.
Thanks, Gene. And as we get into Q2, again, Cameron, probably quick highlight on this one?
Yeah, quick highlight, Wallet SDK, we're going to start to add that highest level sort of aggregate functionality. Things like offer files is when that'll start to show up.
Thanks. And then just again, following along the primitives, we'll have sort of the GUI or front-end experience built around enterprise permissioning, and then also same for enterprise cat minting. Again, really just targeting sort of the more non-technical users that might be interacting with these enterprise tools. And then I'll just show you the last part, which is these are the items that are under consideration. So Paul spoke to some of these. Some of these I've also heard from the community as well. And the intention is that this is not part of the official roadmap, but these are the items that we do want to hear sort of community feedback on. So whether you want to vote it up or you want to comment on this, these are sort of things that are being considered as the category denotes. So we really want to get engagement around these, and this will help kind of fuel and give us feedback in terms of importance and value. And we'll, once committed, will eventually flow into one of these quarters that we are reviewing here today. So I think that brings us to the end of reviewing our roadmap. I think we're going to go move to Q&A section.
Yeah, I did want to talk for just a second about the ETH to Chia bridge. There's, I think, a lot of interest in the community in seeing a bridge from Ethereum in particular to Chia for DeFi projects, but generally speaking, to enable crypto capital inflow to Chia blockchain. So we hear you and agree this is a very high priority as an infrastructure piece for Chia. It's not on our official roadmap yet because we are working on a plan for it, not because it isn't important. So we will likely have more news on that in our next roadmap update, which, as I mentioned, is at the end of this quarter, started in the next quarter. So stay tuned for that then. But I just want folks to know this is a very high priority item for us. We could talk for a second about DAOs as well and some of our thinking around that. Our approach is with a DAO is not that Chia is going to launch its own DAO, but rather that we're going to build a set of DAO primitives that developers can use to launch their own DAOs. I view this as significant and material to the general Chia ecosystem as NFTs, if not even more so. And so we're reluctant to share the overall plan for that yet until we've got more clarity. But again, stay tuned for our next roadmap update on that.
And I'd add that we see DAOs as being more than just what is kind of currently being done online. We see this as things like securities funds to create things like the IFC carbon coin out of a security that was sold online, registered, and legal in the United States. So we expect to take this DAO primitive and go further with it. We joke internally, when you read DAO, you may be seeing Delaware LLC. Okay. Let's go to the question and answer session. I'm going to be your Jay for today because he's taking some well-deserved time off. Paul or anyone, we don't see any AMMs on this roadmap. What's up with that?
So here's what's up with that. And I think there's a question in there around L2. It's true, there isn't an AMM on our roadmap, but we have been actively collaborating with a partner who is planning to launch an AMM soon, trademark. We are not looking to compete with ecosystem players who want to launch AMMs, but we are actively supporting that activity. If you are building an AMM yourself, reach out and we can have conversations. So that's the AMM piece. The L2 part of the question relates to the work we're doing around zero knowledge proof opcodes, so that we have building blocks in place for a ZK rollup to launch as an L2 on Chia. The first effort, though, is getting that chip done and building and shipping the opcode so that it's possible for a ZK rollup to launch on Chia next year or the year after. Yep. We aren't going to build that L2 ourselves. That's like a whole business. And so we're going to actively support and solicit interest from existing rollups and folks that want to build one, and help to actively support those parties.
Yeah, and I just want to add, when we talked about L2, it was figuring out what we wanted to do here. We're doing the ZK rollup stuff soon. The other thing is the actual implementation of the better version of Lightning that Lightning would like is actually relatively straightforward in Chia Lisp. So there is going to be more than one path that we're taking on L2s, though again, we expect others to implement Lightning style Lightning on Chia.
Yeah, I just want to add on AMMs as well. There are actually multiple projects that are working on that, so that's really interesting to see. Don't be fooled by some of these projects. A lot of them do tend to work in incognito, and one day they'll just suddenly release these things. But yeah, it's interesting to see. Obviously, with things like that, you want some kind of standardization, and there is some communication there between these projects as well, to have some kind of a semi-standardized approach between them. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see the differences in approaches between them when they finally launch.
And by the way, it leads to an interesting community project of taking and overlaying multiple different sources of roadmap, because you're just looking at the Chia Network Inc. roadmap pieces. You're not seeing the full story of what's going on in the ecosystem. Okay, let's see. Can we get an update on where we are with the IETF BLS standard?
Yeah, you want to answer that? They have published version 5, which is backwards compatible with the updated version 4 and with our implementation. So there is a latest draft that meets our needs that we're happy with. There's no timeline for coming out of draft, but we're happy with the current state of it.
So, Paul, do we have does any of this correlate with requirements from partners or Lighthouse level entities? I may have caught Paul stepping away for a moment. I'll go ahead and answer as he comes back. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, some weird thing going on in the background here. Yes, definitely. Some of the work we're doing is directly correlated to Lighthouse partners. So when I talked earlier in our thematic discussion about market instruments, when we think about minting, CATs, custody, and then permissioning of those tools, this is something that our friends at IFC in our Carbon Opportunities Fund will directly need. So we've been thinking about many of these roadmap items in concert with that as a Lighthouse partner. And that is a kind of directional. But as I mentioned earlier, when we build things, we want to ship with developers as soon as possible. And we did that with NFTs. We had a kind of a closed dev alpha group for NFTs. We had a lot of feedback from that group as we were building and iterating on the standards. And you'll see that pattern continue with Chia.
Great. A reminder for those of you who are in attendance, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box, not in the chat box. We won't be using raised hands, etc. So please use that. Let's see. What's the next one? Are we going to be expanding the ability to blue box other VDFs proofs in the Time Lord situations? Maybe I should answer. Guess I am. So the answer is that we're aware of it. It's a backlog issue because we'd like to be able to get the other compression done first. But frankly, the ASIC Time Lord is going to take those resources first because we think that's a much more important security upgrade. And once that's complete, that's something we'd certainly be willing to revisit. Paul, can you comment, or anyone else, on what a kind of at least high-level set of DAO features would look like in an MVP?
Yeah, sure. So when we think about problems to solve for DAOs, one of those first order areas is obviously how do you crowdfund capital? How do you create a treasury? And so this will be one of the capabilities that we expect to ship. So there'll be a treasury primitive where people can send their XCH and receive back ownership in the DAO in the form of probably something like a DAO cat. Another core capability is around voting. How do you vote on proposals? A third is around how do you organize and distribute those proposals? And some of our current thinking is around using data layer for that. This is like early thinking, but the notion would be that people could use data layer as a DAO participant to create proposals, distribute the documents, so that there's no notion of an information rug pull where the Discord disappears, all the documents disappear, or the proposals were edited after the vote happened, things like that. So that's another really core capability. And then being able to find a way to tie those votes to an actual spend of the treasury. So these are some initial capabilities that we think are really important for DAOs. We also think Chia is very uniquely positioned to deliver on some of these capabilities with our coin set model. So stay tuned for that. And again, we want input from the ecosystem on this, collaborating with Will and our DevRel friends to get those inputs.
And Paul, if I can add also, once we have the core DAO primitive, the interaction of those primitives with our other primitives like DIDs and NFTs, like that's going to start to create a lot more opportunities around, what could be possible in terms of the different types of DAOs that come forward.
Great. I'm going to take the question a little different direction. The question was, how practical would it be for Bitcoin to implement Chia Lisp or VDFs? I think that actually conflates two different things. I think that implementing Chia Lisp is absolutely within Bitcoin's realm, and in fact has been talked about on the Bitcoin Core development list. It is a serious proposal to do that instead and to continue to one-off the new opcodes. I don't think it would be quick, but I do think it would be a superior solution for Bitcoin to kind of move into a high functionality blockchain. Chia Lisp was very much designed in the spirit of Bitcoin with all of Bitcoin's concerns and security best practices in mind. So it is a generic way to kind of get past Bitcoin script to a Turing complete in the UTXO model. Obviously, some minor differences because, of course, they'd be using ECDSA instead of BLS, for example. However, around consensus, I think that's going to be a very difficult problem for Bitcoin to ever move away from proof of work. I do not think it is realistic politically that the various powers that be, if you will, in the Bitcoin community world would move away from that. We are absolutely excited if they would, and we're more excited to help make sure that Bitcoin does move forward. We think that it's important that Bitcoin continues to get more features and functionality, that Bitcoin could do things like the custody and control solutions we're going to launch. And the neat thing, especially to the extent Bitcoin moves in our direction from a Chia Lisp perspective, things you write here will, with very minor modifications, then be able to work on Bitcoin as well. And this gets to one of the kind of core issues. There's a recent article set running around about how in Argentina, people are definitely using Bitcoin, but they're using intermediaries. It's not your keys, not your Bitcoin, and that's a problem. We think we need to solve that problem so that people really do feel comfortable having self-custody of, not just tens of thousands of dollars, but maybe millions of dollars. In fact, I've said somewhere recently that we want to go to a place from a custody and control perspective that you would be dumb not to put your entire net worth into your vault on Chia, which would have a number of assets and capabilities, and you would just be monitoring and managing that with, frankly, bots on your phone. That's where we should get, and that's where we want to get, and I think that is something to be really critical for both Bitcoin and Chia. Paul, what are we talking about? We're talking about an ETH Chia bridge.
Yeah, let's talk about that. We aren't talking about building an atomic swap tool. our current thinking, I'll describe, but first I'll share that we have evaluated all of the major bridges in Ethereum to other blockchains, and have come away very disconcerted or just simply dissatisfied with the technical implementations, and also, disconcerted by the hacks that we've seen from many of the major bridges. So we're taking a different approach. Our current thinking, which could change, but our current thinking is much less of a traditional, quote unquote, traditional permissionless bridge, and much more of a kind of a centralized trusted model using a multi-sig wallet on Ethereum, a multi-sig wallet on the Chia side, and Watcher software that signs transactions. And something like 5 of 9 cosigners for transactions to take assets from ETH and provide wrapped assets on Chia and vice versa. That's our current thinking in how we would build it. So it may be a bridge too far to call it a bridge, because it's really 2 multi-sig wallets. But we'll have more to share with the community on that soon.
And I would just add that we are understandably cautious about this from a security perspective, because bridges have been the #1 exploit for the last 12 months or so. Any new would-be codename stuff on the roadmap, Paul?
So things that are codenamed are things we don't really talk about. So we're not ready to share any of those yet. We do have a couple codename projects that we use internally. We aren't putting them on our roadmap. And we likely won't put a lot of codename things on our roadmap going forward. I know this caused like a lot of excitement and then some consternation as things took longer to materialize. So we generally will not be putting things like that on our roadmap. But we definitely have several real world projects that we're engaged on. And we'll be happy to share more about those when it's appropriate.
And then can we talk about the one-click farming stream? Is there, additional items? What do we mean? Where are we?
Yeah. Yiming, do you want to talk about your current thinking on one-click farming?
Yeah, sure. Right now, I mean, it is something that we are looking at. It is probably a little bit farther off in the horizon. There are different sort of segments of markets that we'd be looking at to make it easier to basically do one-click farming. So, one-click farming, for those of you, is effectively, as you get set up, how do we get a node synced up? How do you actually start farming, making that experience a lot easier? There's actually a handful of technical challenges that we need to work through in order to provide that seamless of an experience. And so it's something that we are working on to figure out how do we kind of take different pieces of this between getting the plotting done, between getting your nodes synced, and how we can enable sort of a true one-click farming experience. So it's something that we are working on, but something that will require a little bit more planning and more diligence around in terms of the areas that we focus on to actually be able to get to a true one-click farming experience.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, I just wanted to add, Gene, that we're already the most decentralized blockchain in the world, and so at the moment, the one-click farming hasn't been our highest priority. Driving growth on the demand side of Chia blockchain is where we've been putting most of our attention, and why you're seeing our roadmap look like this. So that's been really our major focus.
And by the way, I'd add that's intentional in the sense that we do plan to come back. So what you're seeing us do is a lot of the plumbing and other items that would be necessary to really get us to a place where we can do one-click farming very well. But that is kind of a, I don't know, I'm going to guess 18-month out kind of thing. It could come in, could come out. Point is that we're right now focused on getting high value transactions moving across the chain, making you farmers more fees per block, and driving fundamental demand for Chia coins as access to the Chia blockchain. So with an eye to the clock, we're about 2 minutes past. I'm going to stop the questions here. If anybody had a question that didn't get answered, please feel free to drop into the general chat on Keybase, and we'll see what we can do to get some of those additionals answered. I'm going to put everybody on the spot. The things that are on the roadmap, let's go through the room. What's your favorite item? We'll start with Cameron.
Oh, that is a tough one. Probably the wallet SDK, I think, has the biggest impact.
Yiming? Nope, go ahead.
Can I say two?
You can.
Singleton spend aggregation is also going to revolutionize some things.
Absolutely. Yiming?
I think clawback support, I think that's going to be really differentiating for Chia, and I think it'd be really exciting to see how we can actually craft a good experience around that for our end users.
And then Will?
I think I'll go for data layer because there's just so many different combinations. How can we use with other technology and other primitives? That there's so many different ideas we've heard that we couldn't have even conceptualized ourselves. So yeah, it's really exciting.
And Paul?
So difficult to have, more love for one of your children than others. And so I would say, generally the wallet SDK is like super valuable for developers. But if I had a second, it would be just the enterprise primitives that we're shipping are really where Chia is going to start to see significant enterprise adoption.
And to put myself on the spot, I'm a big fan of the custody stuff. I think people are going to be blown away with what you can actually do and how easy it can be for mere mortals to self-custody crypto. With that, thanks everybody. Good questions. We look forward to updating this in the future. We will be having an AMA soon. No TM. We don't have the exact schedule set. There were a few questions that are probably more appropriate there. Obviously, a lot of excitement around the Carbon Opportunities Fund announcement yesterday. Available on Twitter, Reddit, and Keybase to answer some of those questions as well. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.